Come. Okay. Hi, NABJ members. Hopefully, everyone can hear me and can see me. My name is Walter Smith-Randolph. I'm treasurer of the National Association of Black Journalists, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for this special session called Accounting and Accountability Taking Care of Chapter Business. This is a special workshop provided to us by Fifth Third Bank and RTW Exact. We have some awesome panelists. Again, my name is Walter Smith-Randolph. I am your treasurer. I also serve as investigative editor for Connecticut Public Broadcasting and lead reporter for the Accountability Project. So as you can tell, I love accountability. So we have two panelists. I'm going to start off with Pat Ramsey. Pat Ramsey is based in Cleveland, and she's Vice President of Community and Economic Development at Fifth Third Bank. She has also worked at U.S. Bank. She has her MBA from the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. And then we also have Robbie Terry-Washington, who is a certified public accountant, also has an MBA. She is an owner at RTW Exact Enterprises. And she has also served as controller, treasurer of Mastech Nasoro, U.S. controller of Premier Global Services, investment accounting manager at Key Bank, and a senior financial analyst at Key Bank as well. So I just read you their resumes, but if Pat and Robbie want to say just a few words.
Oh, okay, Walter, thank you so much for introducing us, and we're just glad to be here. And, I just want to say that we're just here to impart some knowledge that you may already be aware of, or to confirm what you already need to know. Just so that you know, I'm also on a whole bunch of other boards and stuff, but I'm treasurer of the Urban League of Greater Cleveland here in town. And I've been treasurer of different smaller groups like PTAs and stuff like that. And also the Jack and Jill. If you've heard of Jack and Jill, we've had a teen group where I had to be treasurer there. So I've been doing small stuff, and I would say I've been doing big stuff. So I'll stop right there. Robbie, you might want to say something.
You're muted, Robbie.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for participating. I'm thankful that Pat called me. One of the things that RTW does is we work with all of the community-based organizations in support of small businesses, nonprofits. So my vision and the goal for my small boutique accounting firm is aligned with many of the community-based organizations, because when I started RTW, I had several years of public experience. And one of the things that I wanted to do after serving many years in that public sector, I wanted to be able to be more impactful. I wanted to work with the smaller person. I've worked for billionaires and private equity, making lots and lots of money, but I wanted to leave a legacy, and I wanted to be more impactful to my people. I wanted to be more impactful to our economics. And I wanted to be part of the movement to break the chains, to provide that access to capital for you small businesses and the nonprofits that support that initiative, like the National Association of Black Journalists. So with that said, a lot of experience, like Pat said, some big ones, work with some small ones, doing a variety of different financial services. But when she gave me the call, I was excited about joining because I had just done a review of your Cleveland chapter, National Association of Black Journalists, to provide a review of their financial statements so that they could get a grant. So it's really important that we have that financial stewardship. So with that, I'll end and we'll begin our presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Robbie. You know what, before we get started too, I just want to wish everybody a happy Juneteenth day. This is the day that we wanted to see happen for a long time. And I just sent Walter a picture that's on my wall in the back. You can't see it because maybe it's too small, or maybe you can see if you blow me up. But it says Juneteenth Day, and I met an artist that was commissioned to actually do the Juneteenth print for Texas back in 1982. So that was when I first became familiar with Juneteenth. So I'm glad that we are here today talking about financial stewardship. I'm very happy about the fact that we have a holiday to celebrate the freedom from 1865. So anyway, thank you for this opportunity to share how valuable the management of financial records is for each chapter to further support the mission of the National Association of Black Journalists. And understanding your financial records will allow you to grow your mission, which is great. I love your mission. And in other words, as a leader and as a member, learn the basics of how money flows into your chapter and what's needed to cover your expenses, and eventually begin to leverage your fund to raise money in the community to further support your mission. So keep in mind, members, leaders, and community partners all want accountability.
Awesome. So a little bit about our agenda today. We did our welcomes, our introductions, and our purpose. We're going to talk a little bit about chapter responsibilities, policies, and control. We're also going to talk about understanding financial statements and best practices. And we actually have some examples of some financial statements that we think that everyone should be following. We're going to talk a little bit about recommended accounting practices. And then we have recommendation on applications for managing financial records. We're going to present for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have 15 minutes for question and answer. When we do get to question and answer, I'm going to ask that you either raise your hand or you put your question in the chat box, and we'll go that way. So again, thank you for everyone for joining us. So we won't keep you too long. And thanks to Robbie and Pat as well for putting this awesome presentation together.
Thank you, Walter, for bringing us along here. And again, I always like to start out with chapter responsibilities, policy, controls. It's the numbers, or is it? And what you'll find out, it's not just the numbers, but it's also making sure that we're following what your mission statement is all about, with sticking to your knitting and staying in your lane. And I love your mission statement because you're talking about innovation and training, quality program services, professional development, especially for your people. Basically, you guys are doing networking and you're doing some career advancement opportunities, which I think is really important. But of course, what's really important as you're doing that mission is making sure that you have the monies and that you are watching and being good steward of your monies to make sure that you are delivering to your community. And of course, your leadership is important. When you have talking about a board, you're talking about having the talents, the skills, and the involvement and the commitment to make sure that you're following through. And I tell you, leadership is really important. And as I said before, I've been on small boards and small community situations, but having the time and not overtime, but just making sure that you simply understand what are the responsibilities in order to be that leader. And then of course, foundational strength of the organization is so important. You're talking about sustainability of your programs and your services. And we do care what our public thinks. We do care what your funders think. We do care what the community is thinking about what you guys are doing, as well as your community partners and your collaborators. So with that in mind, we're going to start off with what you already signed up for, and that's your National Association Black Journalists Affiliate Chapter Required Financials Controls. So we're going to skim through this, and then we'll have some more comments at the end. But these are important because with me being a banker and Robbie being an accountant, we're thinking that, yes, there are some important things here that you guys need to follow and make sure that you're doing. So we don't want you just signing the bottom line and then just putting it to the side and doing whatever you need to do. You really need to follow through with this. So for instance, bonding is very critical, especially of the president and the treasurer. Banks require counter signatures of all checks regarding funds distribution, purchases, dues, and things of that nature. So that means you're signing resolutions and what have you, but you're also making sure that you are setting up your bank accounts so that the signature cards are reflecting who is in charge. And after new officers are elected, you got to make sure that you change them. I mean, I sit on a pretty significant board here with the Urban League, and whenever we have changes in the president or the chairman of the board, I have to walk into a different bank, not my bank, but in a different bank in order to sign the signature cards. I mean, that's just what you have to do. And then of course, copy of all bank statements, including canceled checks, will go to someone other than the treasurer, because you want to make sure that you have various people that know what is going on with the reconciliation and making sure that things are coming in. And then you have your bank statements. Again, reconciliation is important, but it needs to be reviewed by the president or another member to make sure that the executive board or finance committee is taking control or making sure they understand what is going on there. Robbie, did you have a point that you wanted to make about the reconciliation here?
Yes, what I would add is make it a good habit, if you're not doing so, hopefully you are, to have the treasurer do a monthly reconciliation to basically ensure that all the inflows and outflows of your cash has been accounted for, and that all the activity that hit your bank account is reconciled. And that information should go to the board each month for review. Part of that is to see what Pat will talk about a little bit later, the budget that you create to make sure that the money's coming in and out reflect that budget and what your intended goals are, and that the money is being spent appropriately based on those funding sources.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. And so speaking of budgets and financial report, you start every fiscal year with a budget that is prepared by the affiliate chapter president and treasurer and approved by the affiliate chapter's full board of directors. And also you're looking at requiring the chapter's treasurer to submit monthly, quarterly, and annual profit and loss statements and the balance sheet to the board of directors. Now, before we talk about that, I want to go back up to the budget. And basically that is prepared every single year. And Walter, if you want to share what the operating draft budget sort of looks like at this time. And let's see if we can do that. And if not, we can share that a little later on. But what's really, oh, there we go. Thank you. You're letting people in, okay. Here's the thing. Every year, every beginning of each year, you wanna have a simple budget put together so that you know what's going on and that people understand what dollars are coming in. So at this point in time, we're offering just a very simple process. And what we'll talk about later on is the fact that you should also be able to use certain software applications that will help you put this together as well too. So you got your support and revenue, you're talking about your memberships, your grants, for things that you may have applied for, any contributions that are coming in, any kind of corporate partnerships. And we just want to really keep it simple, but we wanted to share with you is that you should be at least familiar with setting up a budget each year to make sure that you're following through on what's taking place. And then of course you're following through on your expenses. Some of you may have professional fees. I don't think that any of you have any wages or anything like that unless you're really huge and you have somebody that's coming in to do certain things. But then you might have an occupancy kind of an expense wherever you guys decide to have meetings. Or general administration expenses. So there may be little things in there that's going on, but this is just to show you an example of what it could look like. Now, the other thing that I put here is an actual month one, month two, the actual activities that are actually taking place. So in this particular instance, while you have your operating budget, you might be able to draw out your spreadsheet to show what are the actual revenues that are coming in each month and what are the actual expenses that are coming in each month. And this will give you an idea of where you are in terms of your budget as well too. So this is just a recommendation, very simplistic, to basically say, these are the things that you need to be aware of as you're working with all the things that you're working with here. Okay, if you can show the cash receipts real quick on that tab. Thank you, Walter. And so what we're saying here And we'll talk about this a little bit more. And as we talked about this, as we went through this program before, you may not be having cash receipts, but you're getting receipts. You're getting checks in from different people. You're getting the membership checks, perhaps other checks from your people that are making contributions to you or what have you. But the whole thing is that you're keeping track of everything that you're doing. And then you have a date for all of your deposits. So whatever is coming in, you know what's coming in, you're keeping track, and then you're making sure that you are depositing each situation that comes in at the time that you do this. So we're just saying that here's a process. There could be a software package out there that you can do this as well too. But again, this is something that you could probably get a copy of and just use it for simplistic, but it's very important that you just keep track of these things. Okay.
And if the only thing I would like to add to that, Pat, she's talking about the budget, and what I would add to this is that this is the most critical thing for a nonprofit, right? Because those funders that provide that funding, or just a regular individual like myself that believes in your mission, that will contribute, we want to know that you're good stewards of that money, that you're doing it for the purpose that it was intended. A lot of the things that she talked about in terms of keeping the records, what I would suggest in today's technology world, get us a system of record, a cloud system, QuickBooks. I partner with them. I'm not trying to sell it at this point, but I'm just giving you some options I believe are viable options. All of this can be done in the system. You don't have to worry about it. Your treasurer should be able to keep the records that way when he's reconciling. So it's all done at one time. But if you don't have somebody internally doing it, hire somebody externally, like myself. A company like myself, doesn't have to be me, any company in your locally, but have somebody keeping that for you. We are going to talk about why that's important, not just to provide the funding reports to the funders to say, thank you for your pledge, thank you for this, and this is how we spent it, but also you can position yourself to continue to get funding, right? And you owe the community that. The community should know, because whatever your mission is, and the people are relying on you for those funds to be accounted for appropriately. And you want to make sure that you're doing everything that Pat here is going to describe, and Walter in this session today is very, very critical. And people just really don't understand how critical it is. But people are finding out now, because you can't get funding. And that's right. Why I did the review for your Cleveland chapter. So there's a lot of reasons you want to do this, and it makes it easy for you to track. You're not shuffling a lot of paper. You can get right on your phone, look at your QuickBooks, and then keep it moving, because time is money, and we know you all are busy.
That's true. All right, so I want to get back to my screen. All right, so share, and I am back. All right, so what worked in rehearsal works now. Okay, so at any rate, we talked about that. Let me go to the next page here. All right, so again, in your financial controls, what you signed up for is that you would have a finance committee of at least 3 members sharing the responsibilities. And I think that this is really important. I really like seeing this, because this will help you to identify people that will be ready to become treasurer in the future, because you're not going to be treasurer forever, or at least you shouldn't be. But you want to make sure that people coming into the organization have the opportunity to share their skills as well too. And you want to make sure that they are prepared to take on that responsibility. And of course, with all incoming funds, including dues, monies raised for chapter activities, recommendation here is in the form of the checks, that under no circumstances should checks be made payable to individuals and turned over. But here we say to the treasurer immediately, but we have a couple of footnotes about this as well too. My footnote is that don't forget that there's electronic payments and receipts got to be made for those particular electronic payments. I myself, I make payments basically on bill pay, or there's probably a site that has donate or what have you, and I may be using that. But whenever those come in, you basically want to make sure that you acknowledge that those things have been made. So Robbie, here's where you want to say maybe a recommendation for the future, where we talked about checks should be turned over to the treasurer immediately, but you had some other thoughts about this.
Right, because the treasurer in most instances, right, is going to be the person who's reconciling your account, basically saying, these are all the receipts, here's what they were used for, here's all of everything that was paid, you know, to support that fundraising event or whatever that expense is, paying salaries, operational expenses. He's reconciling that, right? So the person who receives the checks should be a different person other than the person who's reconciling. Because if I'm reconciling and I collect the checks, I could scoot one check someplace else. You all will never know, because I'm reconciling. It'll never hit your bank account, because you're going to get the bank account. It'll never hit your bank account. When I reconcile, I'll just reconcile what I deposited. Any other monies, cash receipts, other checks, if I'm doing a reconciliation and collecting, I can play around. I can make some magic. So if you don't know what that means, you want to hire a professional just to come in and do a process audit for you, to show you who should be doing what in terms of cash receipts, cash payments, etc. So that is extremely important, because we know there's a lot of fraud out there, and we don't mean to intend that anybody intentionally would try to commit fraud, or it's not that. You just want to make sure that you're doing the right thing to make sure that the donations that the companies, organizations, individuals are contributing to the organization reach the organization and is used for those purposes.
Yeah, you know, that's a recommendation as we're sort of making when you're considering your financial controls, and maybe changing up maybe the financial controls to somewhat take a look at that. I know that in larger nonprofit organizations, like in my sorority, I know that we may have a financial secretary 1, a financial secretary 2, and then you do have a treasurer. So, I mean, there's a lot of functions that are being broken up to make sure that we do certain things. So I think that that's pretty important. So, Walter, did you want to add a couple of comments before we go into the next session here?
Sure did. If you want to go back one more slide, Pat.
Absolutely.
Another one. Sorry, because it's 2. Okay. Just to give you a few examples of why this is important. So for your bonding, it's a requirement with our financial controls that we have bonding, especially your president and your treasurer. So this is bonding insurance. And a perfect example of this is that we had some issues with our Atlanta chapter where some of the money was misappropriated by the treasurer. And so even though the former treasurer did give some of the money back, all the money wasn't there. And so they did file an insurance claim with their bonding company for $20,000. And they just found out about a week or 2 ago that they are going to be made whole. So they're going to be able to make up that money. So that's why having that is important. Making sure that you have counter signatures on all checks regarding funds distribution purchases means, you know, having more than one signature. And that's important as well. Before I was national treasurer, I was vice president of our Cincinnati chapter. And so we had our president, our treasurer, and myself, all 3 of us were signed onto the account. So that way, you know, there was checks and balances. And it's important to make sure that once those people are done with their terms, that you go to the bank and you get their names off and put the new names on. And so in my role as vice president, that's what I did. I helped that transition, because actually our president and our treasurer moved to a different city, and I didn't need them to go into the bank with me, take their names off, but I needed the new people to go with me to put their new names on. And so you want to make sure that you're taking their names off, so that way they no longer have access to that account, but also make sure you know your rules. So I was in Ohio and we were banking actually with Fifth Third Bank in Ohio, you can just go in there and you can say, okay, you can show them your minutes and say, these are the minutes of the board. This is what we need to do. In Georgia, you have to go to the Secretary of State and change the incorporation papers. And so when they went to Wells Fargo and tried to change it over, Wells Fargo said, you got to go to the Secretary of State and get this changed over before we can do anything. And then COVID happened and then delayed and all that stuff. Which also brings me to another point, bank statements. What we did in Cincinnati is we sent the bank statements to the general mailbox. So anyone who is in charge, the president, the treasurer, the secretary, the social chairs, your corresponding secretary, if you have one, they can all have access to their emails. And so there's transparency. So everyone sees the bank statements. They know that they're there. They know that they're coming. You don't want to just going to one person. And you also want to make sure multiple people have access to those online accounts. A lot of times people are just doing online banking. They're not getting the paper statements because they may not have a PO box. If they do have a PO box, they don't check it all the time. So make sure that somebody else has access to those accounts. Unfortunately, in our Atlanta chapter, that wasn't happening. That's kind of how it happened. We went on for so long. So, and I don't mean to point out Atlanta. That's just the most recent example that we have. We know that this has happened before. So just making sure that you have your bonding insurance, making sure that your bank statements are going to multiple people, and make sure you get those names changed off of the accounts as well.
Yeah, Walter, it's pretty important that we learn from the mistakes that have been made, the mishaps that have happened, and it just makes it even more better and more secure for what we're trying to do, which is why we are here today. So, I think that that's really important. And so what's really good to know right now is understanding your financials of your chapter means understanding how the money flows through your organization on paper or electronically. So it's important for that wise historical financial management and sustainability is to transfer financial records from the current officers, as Walter just said, to the incoming officers, because it's that important. What else can we say? So we're talking about understanding financial statements, and in going through this today, we're going to be looking at as a definitional point of view, the following statements are important for understanding your chapter financials, such as the statement of financial position, also known as the balance sheet, the statement of activities, which is also known as the income statement. And we're going to talk about the cash flow statement, which a lot of us, I tell you, I used to have a lot of people prepare cash flow statements so that they understand how the cash is coming in and what's going out. As a banker, I used to have that done a long time ago. So as we move into what this is, what we're actually looking at, we're looking at the statement of financial position, again, the balance sheet. And this is basically a snapshot of a point in time. So you're looking at your assets, which is your cash investments, your investments, your donations, your program receivables, your grants. Looking at the liabilities, you're looking at any kind of payables that you're supposed to pay over time, debt, any lines of credit, term debt, and why those things actually exist. Because a lot of nonprofits, especially a small chapter affiliate, may not have all of those things, but you may still have some things that you got to pay out. And notice again, as you're doing grants and donations, notice the restrictions on those donations, that they can only be used for one thing and one thing only. So of course, after your assets and liabilities, you observe a total fund balance, which means that you have some sort of income maybe over time after you spent your revenues, you did your expenses, you may have stuff left over. So you probably have some net assets that you can apply to your programs and what have you. The other thing that we're looking at is the statement of activities, also known as your income statement, which are produced monthly, quarterly, and in this particular instance, your financial controls are saying that these two things need to be done on a monthly basis, whether you meet or not. So keep in mind on your revenues, again, keep in mind the programs and services that you are providing as you're looking at the revenues and expenses. And so is that, how much are your membership dues? What are your donations? What are your grants? All of those things are coming into play. And of course, looking at expenses to determine if they make sense for your chapter. And you're paying attention to the ratio of all those expenses to your income as you're dealing with this, because I will tell you now that if you're not looking at these, the people that you are reporting to or people that you're trying to get dollars from are going to basically be looking at what's going on with your revenues and expenses and how you are dealing with those. So of course, after revenues and expenses, you're looking at your net income. I think that this is a good time for us to show the statement of financial position. And Robbie, did you want to say anything about these two items here as we bring those up?
Yeah, I just want to just augment what she said. And I teach all the time. I teach financial literacy, and I try to keep things in layman's terms for people to understand, because sometimes it's, the verbiage can be, if you are a broadcaster, can be foreign. But if you can read, if you can read a nutrition label, you can read a financial statement. We're not trying to make you accountants, but you should be able to review them and they make sense to you. And I know you guys probably remember the old movie, Jerry Maguire, when he kept saying, "Show me the money." That's all these financial statements are doing. They're showing you the money. They're telling you, where money, what you spent, how much you brought in, where you were and where you are now. That's all it does. The balance sheet is a reflection of the value, okay? And as Pat stated, basically this is how it works. Balance sheet is your assets, what you own, cash, your pledges, your receivables, people that owe you, your fixed assets, your furniture, equipment, all of that, that's what you own, your liabilities. If you owe anybody, if you got a credit card, if you got a loan, a note, SBA stuff that has been going around, the difference between those is your equity. Now, your profit and loss, on the other hand, that's the money that came in. It came through that cash, that bank account. That's all your income, your revenues, your grants, your memberships. That's all the money that came in, your fundraising. Then everything that you had to spend to make it happen and pay for your operations, your salary. Then you got your net income. That net income number every year is impacting that balance sheet right there in that unrestricted net asset section. If you had money left over after you spent everything, that's going to increase that number. That means now that balance sheet, your value has gone up. That's what it means in for-profit terms as well. If you had a loss, your value goes down. The balance sheet is very critical because it's the value is cumulative. Now, we said that the balance sheet is a point in time. It really is, but it's really as of. And if you see any statement there, it is as of. That income statement, though, is a snap in time. How much money did I make for the month? A snap in time. How much money did I make for the quarter? A snap in time. At the end of the year, your income statement ends. You start over again on January 1. That's why the income statement is a snap in time, because at the end of the year, you start over. Your balance sheet, however, keeps going. Okay, and it continues to show what you own, who you owe, and your value at the end of the day. So I said all that to say it's not rocket science. You can read it. We're not making you accountants, and we're not showing you the proper accounting, how you show it, but you can read it and say, oh, our total assets is 50,000. If your liabilities were more, you're highly leveraged. It's not that simple. And then if you're highly leveraged, that you're losing. More than likely that equity is going down. So in any event, it's not rocket science. You can read it. I suggest that you start, if you haven't, making sure the treasurer's report, the minutes, everything is aligned. The board approved everything. Everything that you talked about is going to be reflected in the numbers. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, can we show the profit and loss statement, Walter? There we go. So this is the statement of activities, also known as the profit and loss statement. And again, Robbie made reference to this because you're talking about showing again, and this usually is like a date ending, right, Robbie? Like, for instance, it could be the date ending June 30th, 2021. but it's reflecting everything that you're pulling in to your organization and showing it at that point in time, total revenue, for your expenses, and then also a net increase in assets, which happen to be at this point in time, 16,000 showing on this one, which on the balance sheet it showed that your assets actually went up to about $51,000 or a total of your assets and liabilities. So I just keep in mind too, that this will help you as well keep track of your budget when things are coming in and you're building your budget. When you're looking at your statement of activities, again, you can sort of stretch out using your cash flow statements to really understand what expenses or what revenues are coming in and what expenses are going out. I just wanted to make a quick statement before we move on. We had a comment from Tori out there that having online banking is critical. It allows designated people to check the monthly treasurer's reports against the bank statement. So that's just an important function that is taking place out there as well. So I agree with you, Tori, on that. Thank you. Okay, let me see. Okay, let me go back to share screen, share, and I am back. Okay, I get excited when I hit the right button. So you guys have to get a little excited here and there. Okay, so, and then the last thing that we talk about, which is, real simple is, I don't say it's real simple, but it can be simple, is the cash flow statement, which you could do weekly, monthly, and it just flows from your operating activities in your financial audit, but basically saying that it shows your spending patterns, it shows the money's coming in and from where, it shows how the chapter spent the money, and it shows the beginning cash and the ending cash for each period. So when I was doing, when I showed you that operating budget, as I said before, I'm on the board of the Cleveland Urban League, and we have an extensive cash flow statement that really shows where all the monies are coming in from every single grantee or member or corporation or whoever, and it shows all the expenses, but more importantly, it shows what the cash started out with in the beginning of that period and where the cash has been spent and what's the cash available for the next month. And believe you me, we spread that sucker out over 12 months and we can see what's going on and we can see where the problems are and we can see who owes us money and who doesn't owe us money. So I think that that's just really important. Robbie, did you have anything you want to add to that, or did we?
I think you covered it all. The only thing that I will add at the end of the day, it shows if you had an increase in cash or you had a decrease. So if you're getting more in or you're spending more. And that's very important because that shows, okay, what's happening? Maybe my budget is right. Maybe I'm spending too much money here. So it's going to give you different things to look at to show you how to properly manage your cash. And that's why it's extremely important. Bankers always want it. If they're gonna loan you some money, they want that. Statement of cash flow is equally as important as the balance sheet and income statement, because after it tells them your value and how much money came in and went, it's going to tell them how you're doing on a monthly basis in terms of if you're getting more in your take, because it's going to tell them, do you have the wherewithal to pay it back? So
you know what, and that's really important because when I was a lender for small businesses and in particularly small minority businesses, I would have a cash flow sheet made up and I would tell them, you tell me how your money is coming in, show me how you're getting, how you're getting paid. And of course, you're a nonprofit, so that's not relevant to getting paid. But what's important is that you know the flows of your dollars so that you can run the organization. And so I think that that's really critical. Okay, moving right along here. And since we're talking about financial statements, and I'll just run through this real quick and then Robbie can talk about what she did for Cleveland, but there's company prepared statements, Usually the software package like QuickBooks, which, Robbie can talk about that more so than anything else, but CRA Compiled, which is a basic accounting service. And then there's a CPA Review, which is a deeper understanding of the business industry, accounting principles, and what's going on within that organization that's compiled by the company. And then, of course, the CPA Audit, which basically the accountant, correct me if I'm wrong, Robbie, is going through and testing to make sure that the organization is doing things in accordance to generally accepted standards, auditing standards generally accepted in the United States.
Yeah. Basically, all three of those are doing that, but there's limitations on the scope of the services that's provided. And there's reasons why you would want one or the other. You don't always have to have an audit. It's not that serious. You just may need your statements compiled. But what I want to do quickly, if I can, is just educate you. That treasurer that you have that is reconciling your accounts so that you can have those financial statements, most of your larger funders and grantors want one of these things done. And the reason they want one of a compilation or review or an audit done is because it's a third party that has no vested interest in the organization, that is a professional that knows what to look for, that is going to come in and make sure that everything is in accordance to generally accepted accounting principles, which are the principles for revenue recognition and how you record your expenses, et cetera. But to also attest and ensure that you're being a good steward of your money, that you have the accountability to the public, to those funders, and to make sure that everything is on the up and up is the bottom line, so that they can make sure, and sometimes they want this done before they even fund you, or they'll make it a requirement that you do it as a condition of the funding. Most people get it confused though. They think that the accountant is coming in and preparing the financials. No, you should be preparing your financials monthly, yearly. The CPA, the outside accounting firm, is going to come in and either do a compilation, because even though you may have a treasurer, a bookkeeper, or somebody compiling, there's no expectation that that person is a CPA. And the way that those financials are reviewed can take different formats, right? You can have internal reports, which is what your treasurer is going to be reporting for you. The reports that will be compiled or reviewed and or audited have to have a different format because they serve different purposes, right? That grantor may want to look at your functional expenses and specifically what goes under program, what goes under management in general, what goes da-da-da-da-da. Because guess what? If they had restricted funds for that money that they contributed to your organization, that report tells them that it was spent in its intended purpose. And a person testified to it. That CPA came in and said, yup, they did it. So that's why that's important. A compilation is the lowest level. A compilation is just saying, I came in and compiled it to make sure it was in the correct format, according to generally accepted accounting principles, basically the rules. That's simply what that is. There's no attestation or assurances on the numbers. But any compilation, we're going to do our due diligence, of course. And if it's raggedy, we won't even be able to do a compilation. So you do have to have just a level of accuracy on those financial statements that we take and redo, basically, and compiling in that specific format, okay? Now, a review is another level. A review says it's not an audit, and we're not confirming, attesting to those numbers by getting third-party confirmation, but you're going to take some additional steps to make sure, hey, maybe the bank balance, make sure that bank exists, you know, get some statements, maybe go online, make sure that the statement exists, look at the policies and the procedures, the minutes, making sure that things are, if it says something in the minutes, the money was supposed to come in, checking, making sure it's there, making sure that the president, whoever was supposed to approve it, approved it, whatever. Limited scope, however, more than a compilation. Now, the highest level is the audit. The audit is saying, let me have your financials that's been prepared along the year. We're going to take those. We are going to basically dissect them. We are going to make sure that if you have on these financial statements that you have these bank statements that they exist, that that balance is what you said it was, that your treasurer compiled, that balance is what it is. We're going to make sure that that there's no funny money, that people within the board and even the board and the employees are not stealing money and doing things, that you have proper processes in place to safeguard your assets. And of course, a funder wants that to happen before they give you money out. They're not going to give people money and people going and pocketing it and using it for personal purposes. They want to make sure that money, if I give it to you, you use it for what it's intended. That's basically what it is. It's giving that assurance to those funders. And you want it for yourself, because if you are ethical, moral, and you're on the up and up, you're an open book, as you should be, because that's money that was granted and funded to you. So to a certain degree, you are an open book. You're accountable. That stewardship, you're accountable to all the stakeholders, the board, the community, the people that volunteer their time, to you, to your time that you involve, because a lot of these are non-paid positions. So that's basically what that means. And this session here is not to ding you or say you're doing anything wrong, but what Walter is doing as treasurer of the national, he's doing his job and making sure that you are all aligned, that each chapter is doing everything that they are supposed to be doing. And if you're not, we're here for you, and we're here to provide that guidance to you. And if you need that, just to make sure that everybody is moving in the right trajectory, everybody is moving in the right. And because, you know, it's a lot of fraud out here nowadays, and I think taking these extra steps is critical. This is like Pat said, this is a wonderful mission that you guys have. You want to make sure that you maintain that and you are sustainable. And all of these things ensure that.
Hey, Robbie, thank you so much for taking a deep dive into understanding some of these, the type of statements that are prepared. And guys, you know, you may need a compile, you may need a review. I don't know if you'll ever need an audit, but here's the thing, at least you know about this, number one, and number two, a lot of you guys are probably serving on other boards all throughout the community. So guess what? Not only are you serving on the board of National Association of Black Journalists, but whenever you're going to serve other places in the community, you know exactly what you're looking for. And again, understanding what needs to take place when you are working with the various organizations. And with that, we'll move forward to some of the best practices. Again, your NABJ affiliate chapter required financials control is the overarching piece that is needed to make sure that you avoid the scammings, the frauds, and things of that nature. You have information technology controls to include password protections. You are reviewing all the transaction reviews. So your review of your invoices, your reimbursements, per your financial controls within your budget. You're looking at your cash receipts or your receipts, not necessarily your cash receipts, but your receipts to monitor again, excuse me, for donations, for restrictions and what have you, and assure that you're meeting the requirements of the donations through the expenses. So making sure that whatever you're getting the donations for, that you're spending it on what you're supposed to be spending it on. Again, you're following through on the National Association of Black Journalists financial controls for monthly reconciliation. you're reviewing your monthly financial reports, and the most important thing is that you're staying current with all of this. You have to stay current with all of this. Let me read the next page is the best practices. And that's why you have us here today. Not that, well, I think Robbie is truly an expert in accounting. I'm the banker, so to speak, but get help from experts, an experienced volunteer and/or an accountant who understands the chapter business to initially assist with setting up your records even, okay? Be systematic, follow your affiliate chapter required financial controls to minimize risk and fraud. I can't tell you as a banker how much I am sitting through classes and everything else inside the bank to understand how people are trying to get into the bank to commit fraud. And not only that, this risk and fraud protection that we're talking about, it protects your integrity and your reputation. The last point on this that I want to make is keep personal funds and chapter funds separate. Do not use personal credit cards for chapter expenses. Commingling of funds is not liked by the IRS and/or the state attorney general's office. And it may be okay to charge a chapter expense on a personal credit card and get reimbursed for it occasionally if you have a reimbursement form and a process. So in other words, we're saying, don't make it a habit. Don't make it a habit. We know that things, in the ordinary, situation of business that you may have to get certain things done, but don't make it a habit of doing things like that. Do it the right way the first time and encourage good practices the whole time. So with that, we can probably go into question and answers and discussion. And, we just thank you for allowing us to have this time to talk. I'm going to, whoops, I don't know what I just did. But
I just like to add one thing. We didn't touch on your 990s. You're probably doing it, but we have to mention it. Make sure that if your gross receipts are 50,000 or less, you have to do a postcard, a 990N. That's what that's called. 50,000 to 200,000, a 990EZ. Over 200,000, a 990. The treasurer, if not all treasurers are tax people, but he should be familiar, he or she should be familiar. If you don't do those in 3 years, your status can be revoked by the IRS. So we just want to make sure to make that point, but I'm sure you guys are doing it, but we just have to point that out.
And I like the fact that we also talked to Walter earlier about the checklist that you guys have to do every year to certify that your 990 is done, that certain requirements are done as a matter of, your affiliation responsibilities. And I think, yeah, I love it, Walter. This is so important that you're holding regular meetings, that your bylaws are in place. Walter, did you want to say some more about this? Because I think that this is great. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, we have the financial controls. This is the audit that we do, internal audit, to make sure that you're keeping your professional chapter membership. So, all the information is here. If anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask them. Put them in the chat box or raise your hand and we can ask them for you. But in general, if you have any questions about operating chapter finances, feel free to reach out to me or to the national office. We do separate the two. It is important to reiterate that, the local chapter is in charge of their own finances and NABJ is in charge of their own finances because it's an affiliate chapter. But we do have the chapter handbook, which, kind of lays out everything for you. So I'm going to put a link to this chapter handbook into the chat box so you can take a look at it. But, a lot of the questions that a lot of people have can be answered in here. It's simple as how do I start a chapter? How do I transition? How, all things like that. So, and we have the financial controls, but remember making sure that you're bonded, to me, is one of the most important things. Make sure those financial statements, like Tori said, Tori's our regional director for Region 1, making sure those statements are being sent to different people so that way you can reconcile them and make sure that there's no funny business. Those are all very important things. All right, with that, we're going to take any questions if anybody has any. Darlene, Nadej, Tori, thank you so much for sticking on through it. We've had a bunch of people come in and out, but you guys have been on, ladies have been on for the entire time. I love to see it. So can you tell us where you're tuning in from, Darlene?
I'm in Washington, D.C., so I'm actually treasurer of the Washington, D.C. chapter of NABJ. So
Awesome.
Pat and Robbie, I learned a few things here from both of you today, so that was great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there are some things that I'm doing, like a monthly statement, sending it to the president, every other board member. But there are some other things that we aren't currently doing that we should be doing, so this was helpful. The slideshow, is that available to email and then we can share with other members of our board?
I have it, Darlene. If you want to put your email in the chat box to me, I'll forward it to you. I also just sent you I also just followed you on Twitter, so I can make sure that you get that as well.
Great.
And this is recorded as well. I forgot to say at the beginning. So I believe this goes on the NABJ YouTube page so that we can go back and reference it as well. And then
Okay.
I plan on showing this to several people. But thank you so much for joining and thanks for the work that you're doing in DC.
Amen.
And Nadej?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm representing the University of the Virgin Islands. I'm currently on St. Croix. I'm just transitioning into becoming the president of our chapter. We're fairly new, so there's a lot to learn. I appreciate that you took the time out today to let us know how to do our professional chapter audits, etc. But if I need any help, I'll be sure to reach out to you guys. If you have any questions, just let me know. I could always drop my email. Yeah, it's nice meeting you. It was a lovely session.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Anything else before we wrap up? Anybody?
What about Tori? Where's Tori from?
Tori is our regional director. Tori's is on Long Island, I believe. Hey, Tori.
Yeah, hi. I'm not turning my camera on because I'm driving and I look homeless, but I'm the Region 1 director for NABJ, which is basically the East Coast, and I am based on Long Island, New York, and I'm a former chapter president for Pittsburgh.
Okay.
This is a great session. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to be talking to my chapters about the things discussed today.
Excellent. Well, we are we're so glad that, first of all, you guys are finding the information very useful. So thank you for participating and thank you for the feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think with that, we're going to wrap it up. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Happy Juneteenth. Hope everyone's able to enjoy the day and enjoy the weekend.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Again, thank you,
Take
Pat.
care.
Good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.